The warning no one heard. It was midnight on Mars, and the stars looked calm and peaceful from the surface of the red planet. A single satellite dish pointed toward deep space. Listening to the quiet hum of the galaxy, this observatory, hidden beneath the dusty hills, was run by machines, but one person stayed behind to clean the place. His name was Rajan. He wasn't a scientist. He wasn't even an engineer. He was just a janitor. Rajan liked his job. He liked the silence. He liked the stars. And every night, after mopping the floors and checking the vents, he sat in front of the giant screens and watched the stars blink in real time. He didn't understand the data, but he enjoyed the view that night. Something strange happened. One of the screens began to flicker. Then another. A soft alarm beeped. One that wasn't loud enough to wake the auto alert system. But Rajan saw it. The screen showed something entering the solar system. A massive shape, dark, silent. It didn't send any signal. It didn't follow any known path. And it didn't match any object in the system's database. Rajan stared at it. He didn't understand what it was, but he felt something in his chest, like a warning. Like a storm before the thunder, he called for help. He pressed the alert button. He sent the image to Earth. Command, but no one replied thousands of miles away. On Earth, the data appeared on a junior analyst's screen, but the office was empty. It was a holiday. By the time someone looked at the image, it was already marked as unconfirmed glitch. The next morning, the object passed Neptune, still silent. Still dark, moving fast. No one noticed. No one listened on the other side of the galaxy. A galaxy council held a routine meeting. Aliens from over 40 different civilizations gathered inside a floating crystal hall. They debated trade routes, peace treaties, mining laws. No one spoke of Earth. No one spoke of danger until an old Tralaxian scholar, covered in silver feathers, raised her claw. She showed a single image, a blurry shape from a human telescope. She said, "This is not random. This is not natural. This is moving with purpose." The council laughed. One diplomat said, "Earth is too far behind to matter." Another said, "Let them handle their own mess." Back on Mars, Rajan watched the object get closer. He didn't sleep. He didn't eat. He just sat and watched. Then the observatory lights blinked once, then twice, then everything went black. The Mars relay went offline. The last image it sent was of the dark object splitting into 3 pieces. Each piece turned toward Earth. The humans didn't know. The aliens didn't care. But Rajan knew, even in the dark. Even with the silence, he knew something terrible was coming back on Earth. Life moved on as usual. Children went to school. Cars moved through traffic. People watched funny videos and complained about the weather. They had no idea at the United Earth Space Center. The alert logs filled up slowly, line after line of strange codes, strange movements, flickers, and gravity readings. But still, no one connected the dots in the deep, cold space between Mars and Earth. The 3 pieces of the dark object moved silently. No heat, no signal, no sound. They were not ships. They were not drones. They were something else, something older, something built for only one thing: destruction. Back in the Galaxy Council, the old Tralaxian stared at her private screen. She zoomed into Earth's system. She saw the 3 shadows move closer. She said softly, "Why aren't they saying anything? Why are they just watching?" And for the first time, she felt a fear she hadn't known in hundreds of years. Fear for Earth, fear for what was coming, fear for what might awaken if humanity was pushed too. Rajan sat alone in the dark room. No light, no power, only the sound of his own breath. He whispered, "They're coming." But no one heard him, no one listened, and Earth kept spinning, blind and unprepared. The first strike at exactly 3:17 a.m. GMT. The sky over Earth changed forever. It started with a flicker in the stars. Then the moon turned a shade darker. A strange pulse moved across the night sky, like a silent wave. Only a few noticed it. An old man fishing in Alaska. A girl stargazing from her rooftop in Mumbai, a pilot flying over the Atlantic who called it a glitch in the sky. But it wasn't a glitch high above Earth's orbit. Every satellite blinked then. One by one they went dark, thousands of eyes in the sky, gone blind. In less than 5 minutes, the International Space Station lost contact. The global weather grid collapsed. Military systems failed to respond. Earth had been cut off from its own sky. Panic spread slowly like a shadow at sunrise. At first, no one understood. Then a pattern appeared on the radar of a deep-sea submarine base in the Pacific. 3 fast-moving objects. Descending, they weren't broadcasting any signal. They didn't respond to Earth's calls. They didn't slow down then. They stopped hovering high above 3 points on Earth, over Cairo, over New York, and over Beijing, and for 10 seconds, everything was quiet. People looked up, news cameras rolled. Everyone waited for a message. A warning, a demand, but there was none. Instead, a white beam of light dropped from the sky above New York. It didn't explode. It didn't burn. It erased a perfect circle 1 mile wide. Vanished from the city in an instant. Buildings, cars, people gone like they were never there. No sound, no debris, no fire, just silence. The world screamed in panic, in horror, in confusion. But still, no message came, no voice, no sign, nothing, only silence. In Beijing and Cairo, the beams began to glow. But before they could strike, something strange happened. Earth fought back. It wasn't the military. It wasn't a weapon. It was a system built by a forgotten engineer. 20 years ago, a secret defense protocol buried deep in the Earth Defense Network. It wasn't supposed to activate, but it did. A burst of magnetic energy shot into the sky from under the Himalayan mountains. The beam over Beijing flickered, then vanished in Cairo. An ancient power plant once abandoned, suddenly reactivated. A pulse wave hit the beam mid-air, and it cracked like glass, then disappeared too. Cities saved, 1 city lost. The world finally woke up. The United Earth Government declared Code Black, the first time in history. Every nation united under one voice. All airspace was shut. All energy redirected to defense. Children were sent underground. Soldiers were called from retirement. Scientists were pulled from every country. The planet was going to fight, and still, the enemy said nothing. High above the planet, the 3 dark shapes just floated, watching. They didn't look like ships. They didn't look like life. They were like black stones, cold, unmoving, waiting in the Galaxy Council. The silence broke. A young alien from the Virillian Republic stood up and shouted, "We must help them." But the council leader raised a hand and said, "Earth is not our concern." The Tralaxian scholar whispered, "If they fall, we will be next." But the vote was passed. No action. No aid, only observation. The council watched. Earth burned, Earth bled, but Earth didn't kneel. And far away, in a frozen observatory, on Mars, Rajan stared at a cracked monitor. He couldn't see Earth, but he could feel. I'd whispered to himself, "They're testing us. They want to see if we'll break." But Earth wouldn't break. Not yet, not ever, because humanity had seen worse. And they always fought back, even when the sky fell silent. Humanity's last broadcast across Earth. The world stood still. Hospitals overflowed. Sirens echoed through empty cities, and skies once filled with planes now held only silence. People of New York cried for the ones who vanished. 1 million souls. Gone in a blink. No fire, no graves. Just air where life used to be. World leaders appeared on screens with shaky voices. They spoke of peace, of protection, of holding together, but their eyes were full of fear, because the enemy still floated above 3. Cold shadows, silent, unmoving. Then, at exactly 7:45 p.m. GMT, a small lab in Finland did something no one expected. They sent a message. It wasn't from the military, not from any president or general. It was from a young engineer named Lyon. She had worked in secret on an old satellite called Echo Zero, a backup signal meant for deep space communication. It was never finished, never tested, but she activated it anyway. She sat alone in a dark room, with shaky fingers and a voice full of fire she spoke into. The mic and Earth listened. Her words traveled past the moon, through Jupiter's orbit, beyond the edges of the solar system to the Galaxy Council, to the enemy, to anyone who was watching. She said, "This is Earth. We know you are watching. We know you. Erased part of us, but we are not done. You may silence our skies, you may break our cities, but we will not kneel. We do not surrender." And then she did something no one expected. She played a song. It was an old human song, a recording from a choir. Voices in different languages, singing together a song of sorrow, of defiance, of unity. The Galaxy Council received the message 2 hours later, inside the floating crystal hall. The sound echoed through every wall. Aliens from every species froze. Some covered their ears, some wept, some stood in silence, not because the song was beautiful, but because it was real. They had expected Earth to beg, to cry, to surrender. Instead, Earth sang, and that terrified them. Back on Earth, the message sparked something unexpected. In every country, people stood up. Old grudges were forgotten. Borders were ignored. Flags were dropped. Only one flag remained. One Earth, one people. Shops turned into shelters. Schools became training grounds. Engineers worked 20-hour shifts. Farmers gave food to soldiers, and soldiers gave protection to children. Every human, rich or poor, old or young, became part of the resistance. They called it the last broadcast, because everyone knew this might be the last thing the galaxy ever hears. From Earth in the Galaxy Council, the silence was heavy. One alien stood and asked, "What are they?" Another replied, "They are broken, but they keep moving." And the Tralaxian elder said, "No, they are not broken. They are rising above Earth." 3 dark objects began to shift. For the first time they moved in unison, and from each of them a new shape dropped. Not a beam, not a weapon, but something worse. Troops, black armor, cold eyes, machines with no soul. They landed without warning, without mercy. Ground shook. The war had begun, but Earth was ready, and somewhere deep inside a mountain, Leanne whispered to herself, "We said, we will not surrender. Let's show them what that means." The battle above Africa, the sky above Africa, turned red, not from fire, not from sunset, but from something far worse. 3 alien warships hovered like mountains in the sky, blocking the sun, casting long shadows across deserts and cities. The people below looked up, not with fear, but with steel in their hearts, because this time they were ready. The world had changed in just a few days. Old armies had become one. Old enemies had become brothers. Africa, once divided by lines on a map, now stood as the front line of Earth's defense, and the enemy had no idea what was waiting for them. Deep in the Kalahari Desert, an ancient research base had been reactivated. It was called Vault 9, inches long forgotten, buried beneath the sands. Once built by a group of scientists who believed Earth would face a sky-born enemy, they had been right, and now Vault 9 was awake inside it, a team of engineers, hackers, and one old war veteran named Commander Yusuf All, waiting for one chance to strike back. The warships above Africa began to open from their underbellies. Machines dropped. Black metal, cold lights, thousands of enemy drones. They didn't roar, they didn't scream. They simply fell like rain made of death. And Earth answered from the mountains of Ethiopia. Lasers fired into the sky from hidden launchers in the Congo. Old missiles roared into the air, and from Vault 9, something else launched, a satellite made from junk. It was built in secret, scrapped together from parts of crashed probes, abandoned communication arrays, and one forgotten weather balloon. They called it the Ghost Net. It wasn't a weapon, it was a trap. As the drones flew, they passed through the Ghost Net's field, and in seconds they shut down one by one. They fell from the sky like metal rain. The aliens didn't understand their drones had perfect code, perfect weapons, perfect movement, but they weren't ready for chaos. Because humans they built with madness, with creativity, with unpredictability. Chaos was humanity's greatest weapon above the skies of Africa. One of the alien ships began to shake. Vault 9 had found its frequency. They weren't just disabling drones. They were talking to the ship itself, not with words, but with signals, corrupted data, noise. Kind of thing only humans used to call artificial error. The ship tried to respond, but its systems began to overload. Lights flickered, engines screamed, and then boom, small explosion burst from its side, followed by fire. Real fire in space. The ship began to drift. Wounded Commander Yusuf stood before the Vault 9 monitors, his hands steady, his voice calm. He said, "That's for New York." The other two ships pulled back, retreating slightly, but not far. The fight wasn't over, not even close in. The Galaxy Council. The news arrived late, but it hit hard. A wounded invasion ship, a failed drone drop, a human counterattack. The council chambers were filled with noise. How did they do this? They are primitive. They shouldn't have survived this long. And yet they had, because humans weren't logical. They weren't perfect. They were wild, messy, and full of something the aliens could never measure: desperation. Back on Earth, children in Ghana drew pictures of the ships falling. Women in Nigeria cooked food for soldiers. Old men in Kenya sang songs from the past to keep courage alive. This wasn't just war. It was survival, and Earth was done waiting. What the galaxy never understood: far beyond Earth, inside the shining walls of the Galaxy Council, a long table of alien leaders sat in confusion. A wounded fleet, a failed invasion, and humans still alive. They watched video feeds, explosions, fire signals. They couldn't decode. They watched Earth fight, but they didn't understand how. They saw chaos. They saw disorder. They saw humans disobeying every rule of logic, but they missed the most important part. They didn't understand what Earth truly was. Earth wasn't just a planet. It was a story. A long one, written in blood, written in loss, written in survival. For thousands of years, humans had fought each other, killed each other, hurt their own kind. But each time, they rebuilt faster, stronger, smarter. What the galaxy saw as weakness was actually Earth's greatest strength, because humans didn't fear war. They had been born in it. In a dusty archive under London, an old historian looked through records of past battles, world wars, natural disasters, pandemics, bombs, famines, and every time humanity had crawled back up with dirt on their face and fire in their eyes, he whispered to himself, "They've never met anyone like us before." On the front lines in South America, soldiers used old cargo trucks to carry homemade plasma weapons. Farmers turned tractors into mobile shields. Engineers hacked alien drones and turned them into scouts. There were no rules, only grit in the orbit above. The enemy ships paused. Their AI minds confused. The humans weren't fighting like soldiers. They were fighting like something else. Survivors. They didn't form perfect lines. They didn't follow protocol. They didn't wait for orders. They moved like fire, unpredictable, spreading everywhere. The council had called humans primitive. They had said, Earth is too young to matter, too chaotic to organize. But they were wrong, because humans had something the galaxy didn't. Pain, and from that pain came something more dangerous than any weapon: memory. They remembered every scar, every betrayal, every time they were told they were not good enough, every time they were told to kneel. And now they were standing back in Vault 9. Commander Yusuf stared at a cracked screen. He saw the enemy ship above Africa struggling to repair. He heard the static voice of a young girl from Beijing saying, "We found a weakness, sending coordinates now." She wasn't a general. She wasn't even a soldier. She was a student, 17 years old, but her mind had cracked the enemy code. Because Earth didn't rely on one hero. Earth relied on millions, from the streets, from villages, from hidden basements and broken buildings. Everyone was part of the resistance. A mechanic in Mexico built a railgun from a train engine. A blind man In Poland created sound maps to track drone movement. A child in South Korea used a toy drone to jam an alien signal man. This made sense to the enemy, but it didn't have to, because the galaxy never understood what Earth really was. It wasn't just one species. It was billions of dreams stitched together with hope and pain. It was dirty, it was loud, it was beautiful. And when pushed against the wall, Earth didn't just fight, it exploded in the council. A silence fell again, but this time it wasn't from arrogance. It was from fear. They watched a new broadcast. A video feed showing human children painting alien warships with flames and chains. A symbol not of hate, but of survival. Tralaxian elder stood slowly, her voice quiet but strong. They do not follow rules because they've had to make their own. They do not fear death because they've lived beside it for too long. They are not like us. They are something else. And then she said the words that no one in the council wanted to. Here, if we push them harder, they will not fall. They will evolve. Back on Earth, under a shattered sky, 1,000 campfires lit up the night. And under each one, a new idea was born, a new weapon, a new hope, because the war wasn't over. But now humanity was awake, the decision that shook the council inside. The shining crystal halls of the Galaxy Council. A storm was building. It was not made of fire, not of weapons, but of words sharp, heavy, unspoken for Centurious 45 alien civilizations. Sat around the golden table, their eyes focused on a single-screen Earth. The images were clear, now ships burning, skies, dark cities on fire. But people still standing. One council leader, tall and armored in gold, raised his claw and said, "They are insects. Let them burn." Silence followed, heavy and cold. Then another voice broke it, soft old. Wrapped in silver feathers, it was the Tralaxian elder. She stood slowly, her wings shaking. "You are wrong. They are not insects, they are fire." Whispers spread across the chamber. Some agreed, some refused to look. The council had always stayed above wars, above planets. They watched, they judged. They never interfered. But no, something was different. The humans were not begging. They were not retreating. They were growing, and the galaxy was watching at the far end of the chamber. 3 new species stood up. They had never spoken in council meetings before. Their voices were soft, their technology weak, but their message was strong. We will help Earth. The room exploded. With outrage, you break the code, you will bring war to your borders. You choose chaos. But the 3 did not step back. One of them, a small creature with glowing blue eyes, simply said, "We remember what it feels like to be small too. Be ignored. To be told we don't belong. Earth reminds us who we were and who we can be again." They walked out of the chamber, and with them, a storm followed. 5 more species stood up, then 7 more, then 10. The council was breaking, not from war, but from truth. Back on Earth, deep inside a mountain in Iceland, the resistance base lit up with a new signal. A ship, alien small, non-hostile, sent a single message: "We are with you." Cheers broke out across the base. Old warriors wept, young fighters laughed. Humanity was not alone anymore. Alien ship landed quietly in the Arctic, and from it came gifts, not weapons, not soldiers, but knowledge, blueprints, weakness maps, language files, energy converters, tools Earth needed to strike back inside Vault 9. Commander Yusuf stared at the data. He whispered, "We're not fighting for survival anymore. We're fighting for the future." Above the planet, the enemy ships moved again. This time with more power, more rage. They had seen the council fracture, and now they wanted to end it before the cracks grew deeper. 3 new ships entered Earth's orbit, bigger, faster, colder. And in the council, the leader in gold shouted, "Now is the time we end Earth before it infects the rest." But fewer voices agreed this time. More looked down, ashamed, afraid, because they had seen the human children painting stars on broken walls. They had seen soldiers shielding strangers with their own bodies. They had seen a planet that refused to kneel, and deep inside their hearts, they had begun to wonder, what if Earth was not the problem? What if Earth was the answer? Earth's rise was never about power. The sky above Earth was no longer blue. It was filled with ships, smoke signals, and something new hope. The enemy had sent 3 more vessels, each larger than the last, each designed to end a world, not conquer it, erase it. But this time Earth was not waiting in the shadows of broken cities. Humans had built something impossible. They had taken pieces from fallen drones, data from alien blueprints, and courage from each other. And they made something no one expected. Project Atlas, not a weapon, but a whisper, a stealth ship. So small it could pass through enemy sensors. So quiet it didn't even show on Earth's own radars. Inside it, 5 people sat. Not soldiers, not heroes. A nurse, a teacher, a retired pilot, a teenage programmer, and a boy who used to deliver pizza. None of them were chosen. They had volunteered. The ship launched from a hidden base in the Andes, and no one knew if it would return. Its mission was simple: reach the control core of the enemy fleet, upload the virus. Leon had written in a coffee shop, using parts from a broken tablet, and if they failed, Earth would fall. But if they succeeded, everything would change. The ship passed through debris, through danger, through death, and finally, it reached the enemy command vessel, a dark monster in orbit. They entered through a maintenance hatch, because the enemy never imagined humans could get that far inside the ship. The walls were cold, alive. Breathing, the crew moved quietly, afraid, but steady at the core. They found Ida, heart of light, pulsing like a star. The programmer connected the virus. The teacher whispered words of hope. The boy stood guard with a stolen plasma cutter, and the nurse watched the timer count down. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1, silence. Then the lights inside the ship flickered. The pulse stopped in orbit. The enemy vessels began to drift, aimless, blind. On Earth, the skies grew still. At Fault 9, Commander Yusuf saw it happen. He fell to his knees, not in defeat, but in awe. They had done it. Earth had survived, but more than that, Earth had changed the story. In the Galaxy Council, a new vote was called, not about war, not about destruction, but about unity. One by one, the species who had watched, who had judged, who had laughed, stood up and voted to invite Earth, not as a subject, but as a member, a voice at the table. When the message reached Earth, there was no parade, no fireworks, just a broadcast, simple, clear: you are no longer alone. But Earth didn't answer right away, because they weren't ready to sit at the table. Not yet. They were too busy rebuilding, helping the wounded, feeding the children, burying the dead, because humans knew the real fight was not in space. It was down here, on the ground, and the hearts and the hands of those who stayed and never gave up. Months passed. A statue was built in New York, not of a general, not of a politician, but of a janitor, Rayon, who saw the warning. When no one else looked, at the base of the statue were 3 simple words: we kept watching. And that was Earth's message to the stars: you can attack us, you can hurt us, you can break our cities, but we will rise, not because we are strong, not because we are perfect, but because we remember, and because we never ever stop.